Hello everyone and welcome to the You Don't Look Like an Engineer podcast. Today it's only me, which is really sad. Sohan couldn't join us today because of technical difficulties. We dearly miss Heather, her and her beautiful, insightful questions. But without further ado, today's conversation is going to be juicy. So let's get our guests to introduce themselves.
I'm Carol. I'm a senior grid connections engineer at Potential Energy. We develop renewable energy projects here in Australia, all types of renewables, so wind, solar, BESS. The only thing we don't do is offshore wind, for now. You never know. And well, my background is I'm an electrical engineer. I have a master's in electrical engineering, everything very power systems, stability related. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here.
I'm Jasmine. I've got a bachelor degree in business mainly, and I majored in events. So I come from a background of working with people and business, so quite naturally gone into recruitment. So currently a senior consultant at Design and Build Recruitment, and is part of the energy and infrastructure division. So a lot of the work that I do is recruiting typically engineers for renewable energy projects, infrastructure projects in Australia. So very keen to help the sort of energy transition that's happening at the moment to hit the sort of net zero goal. And I've got a natural passion for diversity and inclusion, being a woman in business, but also working a lot with women engineers and women in STEM. So that's two sort of passion points for me. So yeah, that's really keen to be here as well.
I want to dig a little bit deeper on your background, ladies, because we hear some accents here. And as we were talking offline, you want to share where you're originally from?
Sure. So I'm from Chile, South America. Originally from Santiago. I was born and raised there and moved to Australia 8 years ago. And since November last year, I'm actually officially Australian Chilean.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's a big milestone.
Yeah.
And I've got a bit of a deceiving accent. Most people can't pick me just from hearing me on the phone, but I'm Swedish. My mom is Norwegian, so I'm half Swedish, half Norwegian. And I've got some Finnish relatives as well, so very Scandinavian, but been living in Australia for over a third of my life, and studied a lot of English before coming here, so my accent is quite mixed. I'm doing my citizenship similar to Cara at the moment, so I'll be dual citizen soon, but yeah, Swedish is probably how I identify best, but
okay,
I speak Swedish, Norwegian and English.
Nice.
Australian slang.
Here, speaking one extra language is hard. There you go.
It's completely, your mind just goes like that. We were just talking about that beforehand. It's like come 5 o'clock and I lose my English.
Yeah, that's right. We in the podcast and usually in the people that we have interviewed in the past have said that something in the childhood or in the younger years led them to a career in STEM or to be involved in a career, that they are. In your case, Jasmine, obviously recruitment isn't in STEM, but still relevant. Do you think there was an influence when you were growing up that made you sort of like decide where you are right now, or it wasn't the case? You just stumbled upon it?
In my case, I was obsessed, and this is the right word, with astronomy. So Chile is big in astronomy, and this is where my background comes in. There's two places in the world that are like perfect for radio telescopes. One is Hawaii, and the other one is the Atacama Desert in Chile. So the European Union actually installed one of the largest radio telescopes in Chile. So of course, in the news and everywhere, people would talk a lot about astronomy. The Chilean government also requested the European Union to basically have Chileans working in the radio telescopes. They're like, you have installed it here. and we appreciate your business, but also can you have like Chilean astronomers? So since I was a little girl, and when I say little girl, I was like 5 or 6, and I was like reciting the whole solar system and like fun facts about planets. Like, you know, that because of the density of Saturn, it can float on water. And I was like saying that when I was a kid. And my parents are both like, my mom is a social worker and my dad is a journalist. So for them, it was completely out of their scope. But they started like incentivizing it quite a lot because they thought, oh, this is interesting. Like she likes it. Because there's so many telescopes, like optical telescopes in Chile, we would travel, we would go to the telescopes, like talk with astronomers. So I got very, very, very interested in astronomy. And in general, like NASA and stuff, like
Wow. Okay. For a 5-year-old to be residing the solar system, I don't think that's very common.
I was obsessed.
Yeah, no, but that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool because it goes to show that what we hear in, on the news or I guess like cultural exposure to STEM makes us think a little bit more and consider it more. So that's awesome. What about you, Jasmine? Did you think you were going to end up in construction?
I think from my point of view, I've always had like a natural ability of sort of bringing people with me, bringing people together, and also being like a spokesperson for people that maybe don't have a strong voice themselves, because I've always had a very strong opinion since I was a little. I started talking before anyone else. My dad always used to say, you should be on radio, like you'd be so good, but also because I always back other people as well. So I was really keen to, it's quite natural to see that what I'm doing today with being sort of a representative for people in diversity conversations, representing people in making big decisions in their career, working with businesses, helping them problem solve, providing marketing insights. Like it's quite natural to see that where I come from in terms of my personality, being quite outspoken, but also having sort of a natural ability to just bring people together, which is obviously one of the reasons why I majored in event and leisure as well, because working closely with people and culture and understanding that side of it was really, really interesting to me. And when I was in Sweden, I studied a lot of sociology as well as psychology as well in college. So always really interested in people. But yeah, as a child and to where I am now, like bringing people together and giving people a voice is definitely why I sort of ended up in recruiting in the area that I do, but also working in recruitment in general. And also then participating in a lot of different diversity conversations, definitely.
Wow, I have so many questions for you and so many topics to discuss from that. Like for example, you say that you use your voice and you want to help others, and that's something that I feel like we in the podcast can resonate with, because essentially what we have created is a platform for everyone to share their story about, their journey and how that challenges, status quo in engineering, being a male-dominated industry, but it's about sharing a voice. Do you think this attribute has helped you move along in like the industry, or has it been a little bit intimidating for other people?
It was definitely something, I think it's a great question, first of all, because it can relate to a lot of people, but I think it was something I had to learn to manage. Because in recruitment, as much as you're talking, you have to listen more, like you have to listen to what people are saying, what they're not saying, what the body language is saying, but also what the market is saying, what people, like there's so much listening involved. So I had to really control, my outspokenness had to be timely. And also had to be sort of mirrored to other people's sort of level to make them feel comfortable and creating a safe space for them, especially a lot with engineers. Like you can generalize a lot, but a lot of people who are super, super specialized in something they studied for a long time maybe can be a little bit, focused on that, or introverted or more quiet, or
I can confirm.
Yeah. And also like people coming from different languages, sexualities, pronouns, whatever. You want to create a safe space for the person that you're with. So I can't come in with the whole tornado of Jasmine and just put all my energy on someone, because
I
I
love
get,
that.
freaked them out a little bit. But it's definitely something that I had to, in my 30 years of life, learn to manage.
Mm.
And then now I'm still learning every day, but it's something that I'm really, really keen to sort of help people bring out the best in them, but also creating a safe space so people do feel comfortable trusting me as a consultant and trusting me as an industry colleague or like, an ambassador for topics similar to them. So it's definitely people are intimidated by it, but I think in the beginning of my career, they were intimidated because I probably couldn't handle it and it was probably too forthcoming. Whereas now I can push and pull depending on the situation, So now I only see it as a benefit.
Yeah. Wow. I love how Kato jumped in straight away and said, I can relate. Coming from the construction and engineering industry myself, there's times that, my personality is very outgoing and very much, as you guys said, like loud, because not only my cultural background, but also just the person that I happen to be. And there's moments that it's not well received and I've had to also lower it down. I'm interested to know, Kato, when you started your career here in Australia, was that something that you also picked up on, like, working with males and I don't know if you worked back home, was there any differences there between how you had to sort of like, let's say, manage your personality a little bit?
Oh, definitely. But it's funny you say the cultural thing. In Chile, I was known for being more of an introvert or a bit more introverted, and not, I don't know, people would say that, I wouldn't hug people as much or, I wasn't very Latin in that sense. Then I came here and people are like, oh, you're so warm or you're so welcoming. And I was like, this is so funny because it obviously comes from different perspectives. In Chile, people expected that from people, right?
Yeah,
like
the
this
threshold.
is the normal. Yeah,
it's high.
The threshold is really high. So when you're under, it's like, oh, you're a bit weird, But in here, it was the opposite. So I was like, what? This is so difficult. But I am more of an extrovert than like most of my colleagues. And this was the case also in Chile. Because most engineers are very, very focused and they don't talk a lot. But one characteristic that I have, I feel, is that, because I'm so outspoken and so direct, I'm very direct. And my husband says that I'm more direct in English than in Spanish. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. But because I'm like that, a lot of people feel safe to tell me things. So in the office, like, of course, I'm an engineer, so I'm in a team of engineers. Sometimes I would get engineers telling me like, oh, my manager said this, I'm not sure how to handle it. And, like they would confide things on me that they wouldn't on others. So for that reason, I didn't want to change much, even though I knew that it was a bit uncomfortable with like, the leadership team sometimes. Because I thought, well, if I don't say these things, no one will. And then we wouldn't be having these conversations that are very important to have. So the type of things I do is like, if someone says something about, I don't know, diversity and inclusion, or a joke about how women are getting the better end of things now, I just joke about how it used to be before, it's like, oh yeah, because before it was so easy for guys, but no one really complained about it. Haha. And I would say this out loud in the lunch, like at lunch with like anyone, right? Around. But I feel it is important to talk about these things because it starts a conversation. I don't mind having the conversation. I understand that it's a difficult topic, and I understand that a lot of guys in particular feel a bit threatened. And that's okay. But we can talk about it. And one thing I pointed out quite a lot was, I'm pretty sure I got in Oregon in my first job here in Australia because I was a woman. I'm pretty sure about that. That they looked at my CV only because I was a woman. But I ended up being like their most capable grad. And I ended up having like promotions after promotions. So I was more than capable. But even though I was more than capable, they didn't see me until they saw that I was a woman. So what does that tell you? Like, were they actually looking at CVs properly? I don't think so.
That's a question for Jasmine. Jasmine, we're looking at you.
Me and Cara spoke about this a little bit at a conference, I think when we first met. But what you're describing there is what we call in recruitment like quota hire. They have, there's someone somewhere that have put, we need to make the intakes this amount of male, this amount of female, and this amount, there's just ticking boxes. But this is something where I speak to as a consultant. My title is not recruiter. My title is consultant. I'm here to give you advice. Whether you want to take it or not is your choice. But you pay me for time. That's why we collaborate, working together. And my job is to represent my candidates. So I think something that I talk to my clients a lot is challenging them a little bit. They say like, "Oh, we really want the next engineer to be a woman." I'm like, "Why?" And I want them to explain me why. And they say, we have a team of just guys, and they have all the same problems to the same solutions to the same ideas. We want innovation, we want different cultures, we want different. If you come from this country, you have went to these universities, and that will bring this information to us. Now we're talking how diversity is actually adding to your business in terms of different innovation, problem solving, etc. If you're coming to me saying that we want more women in our team because we have a quota that we need to fill, I'm going to be a little bit worried, because then I'm going to think, okay, what does the representation in your company looks like? Do you not have any women? If I bring a woman in, are they going to be heard? Are they going to be empowered? Are they going to be, given education or promotional framework? Because this, as a scenario, there might not be any female identifying people on the whole, like, senior leadership board, So why would the people, you might get them on a grad program, but they might not stick around because A, they don't get promoted, they don't get heard in meetings, they don't get educated. And, it's always a little bit, it's something that I challenge my clients on. It's like, why do you want to hire more females? How does that benefit your business? If we do get someone to the team, how are they going to get, the best possible outcome in this company? And it goes for anyone. Like, if the company is not teaching you something, if they're not motivating you, if they're not supporting you, then you really, what really are you doing there? And that's like how you can look at relationships, how you can look at employees, how you can look at anything. But I think, especially if they bring it up to you, you feel like you've only been hired because you're a woman. I think you should probably take a step back as well, look at the company, like, what is the representation here? Do they promote people, etc. And that's like the empowerment, education and awareness that I speak a lot on, and educate myself a lot on as well, so I can then give clients information so they can make right decisions and have a more diverse business in the energy sector. It's
definitely a misconception. Like, in my opinion, and Jasmine would know more, but what I've seen is that statistically speaking, like, when a woman ends up like being hired, they have to be better than the average guy. And that's something that I've noticed quite a lot. Like, you can't be like, if you have a bell curve of capacities in, I don't know, engineering, you would assume that, I don't know, in the middle is most of the people, and and it's fine. But women tend to have to be a bit more on the right hand side, a bit better, for people to actually consider them a bit more seriously, which is a shame, because like, we shouldn't be put in a higher standard, but normally we are. But I think it's because I don't think it's because people are bad. It's like, there's unconscious biases, and people do expect less from you, because it's like, oh, you're women normally are not electrical engineers, so I'll ask tougher questions, and it ends up being a bit weird, but it is them trying to get a hold of this weird situation that they're seeing of a woman being like a good engineer. I don't think it's a bad, like it's people being bad. It's more like it's really hard for their brains.
Do you think, is it that we as perceive as coming on too strong? And I'm going to explain myself here. A lot of the times that we talk about the confidence gap, we hear that people say that women aren't as confident, and when they are confident, they are perceived as bitchy or bossy. So I wonder if when they see females sort of like, you know, in that boss or like, you know, leading, I wonder if they feel like, because men are leaders and that's what they have sort of like from the cavemen story called, I guess, they are leaders. Do you think they feel intimidated, and is that we're coming up too strong in according to them? I don't know. This could be something interesting too.
I think it could be, but I feel like that happens a lot more in leadership positions. Like in engineering positions, it's more about, are you actually capable, right, of being, especially when you're a grad or like a more junior engineer who's doing all the calculations, you know, and all the analysis. They, in their head, I don't think they realize they're doing this on purpose. Like they're not doing it on purpose, but in their head they have to ask you more questions because they don't know if you're actually capable. Well, with a guy, they would probably assume that that person knows a bit more. But with leadership, that's definitely something that happens. I've seen it. I had a manager who was really nice. Like, she had a leadership style that was very different to most of the women you see in leadership. And she was told by her bosses, like, oh no, you're too blunt, or you're too nice with your people. But I've seen guys with the same leadership style and they don't get told off. So I remember she was like, telling me this because she wanted this promotion. She used to be my manager. She then commented this with me as friends. And I was like, mate, I think it's just, the fact that, you know, you have a leadership style that is not very masculine. I honestly thought like it's that, like they, if they see a woman in leadership, it has to be a more masculine type style of leadership. While with men, they allow a lot more. Like there's a range that they allow that is a lot bigger than the range that they allow for women in leadership. So I do think that in leadership positions in particular, that happens. But in technical engineering, I think it's more like the bias is playing a bit more of a role. The bias of, are you actually capable?
It's funny because in your personal story, for example, you were saying that you happen to be the most competent graduate. But what happens if they don't consult with Jasmine and get like a good advice, and they go hiring someone that isn't, you know, as competent because they haven't gone through, you know, probably experience in the journey. They haven't come across so many other things that we have to, you know, take into account when recruiting for a job or when applying to a job, sorry. I think it's harder because if they were only hired for being a female and they were incompetent, then their detriment that they are causing to all the other females also, not just that specific person, it's a little bit harder.
No, I think it's I've been obviously hearing you both, and I think I offer a different perspective because I see it from the other side, which is probably not the public one, which is more the confidential conversations happening in the background. So I think when it comes to bias in terms of, you know, should we hire a female over a man and who should we do here? It's, you know, I think everyone is the easiest solution to get, how do we get more women in the company, is just hire more women, you know? So I've been in situations where, you know, if throughout my career, not to mention any names of companies, but I've been offered a higher fee if I had a woman rather than a male. That's happened. It's common. especially when it comes to, these huge organizations where they have someone sitting in a different country, setting down the law, saying like, you have to have this quota on the leadership board, you have to have this quota on the graduate program, you have to have these. And the only way for them to, they reject people based on gender, and they only accept based on gender. And this happens. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality, because and I don't think it's by ill intent. I think it's only because it's the easiest solution to the problem. Just get me more women, like then we can have more female leaders. Do you know what I mean? Like they don't see the psychology and the support that you need to have within your business structure to actually make, different type of people thrive. And this is something that we educate on when it comes to representation, for example, and educational support, etc. And then on the flip side, it's like, well, why does more women don't apply for the jobs? Why are they not more entitled? I think there's an easy psychology where we look at job descriptions, for example. A lot of job description is using quite masculine language, spearheaded this project and a strong this, like the easiest way to attract women is to use gender neutral language in a job advertisement. Make it as small as possible, because a man will look at the job and they would read the title, the salary, the location, maybe a couple of the dot points underneath apply, or they just call me straight up. Women would read the job description, print it out, highlight, contemplate, and then if they can't tick off one of the things, they might email me and ask me like, I don't have this technical skill, can I still apply? And I'm like, yes. Please apply. You don't have to be a 10 out of 10. We'll take a strong 7, just give me the rest. And I think that's what hinders a lot of, women progressing in their career. I feel like especially women engineers undersell themselves, because I deal with them on a day-to-day basis. How do you rate your skill in like PSCAD from a 1 to 10? The woman will have a PhD, and I've worked 7 years using this in a day-to-day, and she says she's a strong 7.5. And then I speak to a graduate who's never used the tool except for in study research, and ask them, how do you rate yourself from 1 to 10? They say 10, because it's a guy, And this, I know you're laughing, Cara, because it's true. This happens all the time. And it's like women are so introspective, we're so emotionally intelligent that we introspect, we overanalyze. And by doing so, we rather not take the risk to take the next step, because we're risk averse and we don't want to get in trouble or get found out. And I've been a victim of myself, not imposter syndrome, but more like I'd rather go in at a lower level and then prove myself, because I don't want to be in the, deep end where I have too much pressure. And I literally had this conversation with someone yesterday where it's like, should I take the VP or the AVP position? I'm like, I'll take the AVP, because then you don't have too much targets. And it's like, my friend got the same advice from a man. He's like, go with the VP. Like, they're not going to demote you, So it's just women and men think very differently. And I think that, yes, businesses try to fix the problem by just, using a quota system and doing a little bit of unethical practices. That's on them. Businesses are businesses at the end of the day. But I think something that women engineers can do to create more opportunities, and obviously then be a spokesperson or representative for other young female energies coming up in the industries, take a little bit more risk, don't undersell, use your style. Like Cara said, like if you have a more female leadership style that is maybe a little bit more nurturing or a little bit more direct or outspoken or whatever it may be, pioneer that, bang that drum, that's your style. And if that intimidates people, educate them. My aggression, you might misconstrue my passion for aggression. Apologize that that's happening to you, but I just want to explain to you that it's my directness is because of my confidence, my education and my experience. And I'm not being aggressive. I'm just being very sure of what I'm talking about, I think if you take a step back and educate people as you go along, you'll be a really good role model for people in the business, and you'll progress much further as well. Because we don't want to be men. We don't want to be masculine. I think it's important to really encompasses your female energy. But then, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, about mirroring people and pedaling up and down depending on who you're with. I think it's the same thing with that. sometimes you're just going to have to be a little bit more masculine, and sometimes you have to be a little bit more feminine, but you should always do this true to yourself. But I think especially as a woman in this section, you have to be aware that you are underselling yourself most of the time and that you are being undermined a little bit. So you have to be really, really confident about what you know.
Look, I have never had such articulate like advice, and I'm really happy that we got that on this podcast because I have these conversations as well differently, and that's the thing that we are we continue to sort of like do, and I feel like not even just in engineering but maybe in society is like we're not tapping into our femininity of doing things. And even though that's good for certain things because it's made us like, you know, progress so much, but it's also like we sort of like want to fit in, and we use all the, you know, attributes or the traits to do so, like to fit in that boys club, that sometimes we're not embracing what makes us different. And I feel like by embracing that, we create like, you know, it becomes the norm, or it's more acceptable, or it's normalized. I don't know. So I'm really happy that you said that, because I feel like it's going to benefit a lot of young professionals and professionals that have been struggling with that. And thank you for that, because I resonate with that a lot. Ladies, it's been amazing hearing your perspectives on gender quotas and all of this, you know, how to really use your voice and how to continue to be yourself and true to yourself. And I would love to dive into there more, but I want to sort of ask you all the questions. I do want to ask, because you're in this energy sector, and, you know, it's an emerging sector in a few organizations. And I wonder whether, you know, the gender balance in this sector is struggling, or how is it going? Do we see that there's still like more leads that are, you know, males, or is it more balanced than what we think? Could you educate us in this? Because I think it's important for anyone considering entering the energy sector.
I think Karen can obviously speak from personal point of view, because she's been in the industry way longer than I have. But I went to a conference last year which invites the most CEOs and business leaders in the energy sector in one room, and it was over the course of 2 or 3 days. And one of the things they discussed there is that the current quota is 20% female and the rest male. And how people without, you know, with non-binary fit into that, they didn't really disclose, which just goes to show on that side as well. But that's the current quota. And I think it stems from the fact that a lot of professionals in the energy sector come obviously from other sectors, you know. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of people who have studied energy, been in energy, is in energy the whole career. Most of the leaders and people in the industry have had careers in different areas of engineering or management, etc., or regulation, and come into it. So it's something, you know, that's needs to be improved by, you know, for example, bringing more people in from different sectors, graduate programs, awareness, and just education, really. Because if they don't think it's a problem, that's the first step. You know, mm-hmm. You know, you need to identify that it is a problem before you can solve it. And I don't think it's been identified as a problem yet. There is a lot of organisations, like Women in Renewables, Women in Energy Network, like Women in Wind, Women Offshore Wind. Like there's so many little groups popping up. So they're making noise. Mm-hmm. in different ways about either if they're just giving women a panel, like we had today, all-female panel, to discuss a topic non-related to gender, but just giving them a platform to talk, which is really important, because most of the conferences you go to, it's men in suits, you know. So it's when you go to an event and it's all-female organisers, all-female panel, but it's welcome to anyone of any gender, that's quite empowering. But then there's also events where they do talk about how can we improve the quota, how can we invite more women into the industry, how can we do that, etc. So that's from my point of view how it's done. And I'm sure Kara got a different viewpoint being in the teams and being in different organisations.
Well, it's a complicated question for me because, so it really depends. So within my company, there's a lot of women, but, when you look at the engineering team or the grid connections team, it's a different story. And the reason is simple. Only 12% of the grads in electrical engineering, the whole of Australia, are women. So like, that's the maximum you can get, right? And in Chile, it's like 10%. So some countries are better, some are worse. But it's really like, it's 90 and 10. So, and that obviously you can feel it in the meetings, you're in meetings in construction of a solar farm and it's 20 people and 2 women is like, yay. But I noticed, for example, at Transgrid that there were a lot of women in the technical area, like in network planning, a lot more than I was used to. I don't know why that is, but it happened. It happened to be like a place that I met a lot of women in the technical position. As an industry, I think, yes, we can do a lot better, but, the problem with electrical engineering and power systems engineering, I think it has more to do with like, are we showing the possibility of studying this to girls, right? It goes a lot further back. Because when I speak to people about this, like I think I had a very different experience. So Jasmine, the thing that you were describing, I don't have that problem. Like if you ask me what's your ability in PSCAD, I said 10. I don't have a PhD, but like I'm quite confident, right? Like and I never really had that issue. And it goes to show because the first interview I had for a professional role in Australia, I had that job. I knew I just needed the interview because with the CV, you can't see much. Like, yeah, she studied in Chile. What is this university? I don't even know it. But when they met me, they could really see what I was capable of. So I do feel there's this thing with girls. Like, I don't want to say it like so badly, but what I'm thinking is like we're kind of failing our girls, like, because I don't see how there's not more girls interested in pursuing a career like this. Like the only reason I studied this is because sustainability is so important to me. And I know that one of the big, challenges we have to have more renewable energy and have a high penetration of renewable energy in a power system is the fact that it's so hard to control. It's grid connections. Like that's one of the main hurdles we have. And I'm sure a lot of women feel like I do, right? But why didn't they study this? Like I think that's my issue. And I don't know how to fix it, but but I do feel like that's the main issue, and in my area in particular.
And it's we sort of like going back to what we discussed a little bit, because when Jasmine was sharing about the advice that she gives her clients about making sure what they hire people. If we don't have an environment that nourishes the females, we leave. It's proven. We see it on data. It's 5 years and we're gone. We change careers. And I think that's something that is important to mention. And we have discussed in the past about the leaky pipeline. We have the solution to attract more females. We go to schools and we teach them. We know that the problem sort of like comes from the nurture and nature thing. And we teach them about the STEM. It's amazing. STEM is everything. You can create whatever you want. You are a hero to communities. And then they choose engineering. They come here and they leave because there's not an environment for them. So it's really interesting that you say that, not many people study electrical engineering, or not many women, let's say, not many women go and choose these. And it's because A, they probably don't have a role model to study it. B, they probably tap into that and I don't know, they're not supported, and they go to university and, you know, they see a classroom full of men and probably 3 other females that are very confident, and perhaps they are not as confident. They see a Karen, they run away. They see a Laura and they run away. And the same with Jasmine, you know, because I've also feel like I've been very confident for some reason. And I actually not for some reason. I know that is because when I grew up, my parents sort of like modeled that, you know, they modeled the problem solving way of thinking. They model, you know, use your voice. In fact, I was quite rebellious. So it's like the environment that I grew up in, but there's other cultures and there's other women who grew up in environments where the voice was actually not something that they could use. And it's a very complicated subject. And unfortunately, it is affecting our industry massively, but also the way we solve problems. As you said, Jasmine, there's some companies that really need the other lens. They are not really having that, which is sad because we think that we're going to fix it by just bringing more girls across, you know, and not really. We have to look into the environment that we're bringing. There was someone that we interviewed, and it was a really good conversation because he was saying, like, look at it as if it was a garden. Like, there's really certain species that if you bring and the soil is not prepared for that, then they'll die. And that's just such a good analogy because it's basically what happens in engineering as well.
It is. I think as well, like just by what we're doing today is obviously bringing awareness to the different trades available within the engineering sector in energy, for example. And I think just continuing speaking about it, bringing the information to people that may not have that available to them. Like I went to an event recently where there was groups from the New South Wales Department of Education wanting to rural areas and taking them, a group of girls and a group of school kids, to like a solar farm and just showing them, you know, and if they grew up in a household of, you know, a teacher and a hairdresser, then they might not even know, you know, how do you even build the solar farm and how can I be connected to that and what even is the energy transition, you know? So I think just going back to, like Kara said, like starting really, really young and then getting them interested and giving them the information of the career path available is a good start. But then the people who are in the industry, such as me and Carol, are the ones who should really bang the drum and bring the information out of like, you can have a really good lifestyle, you can have a really good life, and you can really do something purposeful if you join the energy transition. You just have to persevere through some smelly boys at school and a little bit of FOMO of your girls who may be studying marketing and communication, that, you know, maybe you don't have the biggest girls group from your class, but you can meet some smelly boys and it'll be fine. But, you know, it's fine. But I think if you can persevere through that and, you know, have your girls from the different communities that pop up and the different networking groups that come up, and I think then we as an industry can foster a really good nature for them, or garden, like you said. But I think just by us doing this today is just bringing awareness to it, and if we can motivate one person, I think we've done a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. We created this platform for everyone to share the story, and somehow people can, you know, relate also to the stories of the people that we interview, and they feel like, oh, so that person also didn't have a role model, and look at what they are at now. So it's quite nice that you guys have given us your time and we can discuss this. I was going to ask you, ladies, more about the energy sector itself. And you mentioned some of the hurdles, Caro. Is there, for anyone that wants to be in the industry, or for anyone that's a young professional and wants to explore, you know, specializations or engineering disciplines to follow, do you have any advice on what the energy people are looking for when, you know, hiring? How can they be more attractive?
So one thing I noticed is that a lot of people are doing things that are a bit more general, but that's not very attractive for companies. They do want someone, for example, in my case, who specialized in power system stability, because you actually really need to understand the technicalities of how you tune a plant so it doesn't affect the power system, how you tune it so it complies with the standards, or maybe if even it gives more support to the grid, so you can allow for more renewables and also get paid because you're supporting in an extra way. And you can only really do that if you're very, very specialized. A lot of people don't want to hear this, but it is like that. You really, really need to specialize in one area, and say like, okay, I'll be an expert in wind turbines, and I'll develop the perfect wind turbine that will not cause the issues that they're historically been causing in the grid. That's one example. In my example is obviously I'll study power system stability, what affects it, and how each technology plays around with each other and affects the grid or can support the grid in a better way. So that's what people are looking for now. Like I've had so many people calling me because I'm so specialized on that, and they realize when we're meetings together, they're like, oh, she would be a good addition because like she knows so much and she can teach like our grads and everyone around her, which I always try to do. But yeah, that's what the industry is looking for, because there are real technical challenges out there, and they need engineers who actually can think really well about those challenges and find solutions.
No, I completely agree. Like, being a specialist definitely makes you more attractive to the employer because they know exactly what they're going to get. And it is quite clear, but there's different career paths within specializations as well. Like, you can, if you're specialized in, for example, grid connection, you can go into being a managerial role. You can go into being a technical lead, just focusing on the technicalities of it. You can go into being a connections manager, just managing the project process of it. You can go into modeling and simulation. So although you're a specialist, it's still not that niche. Like, within every branch, there's more branches kind of thing. So I try to educate people on that. But for me, when I speak to people, about their career progression, I always say, like, dig deep. Dig deep and what's really going to, like, what really triggers your natural curiosity. Because if you're going to be a specialist, you have to be a good one. You have to naturally want to upskill and find out more and push your limits and push yourself, because there's going to be new upgrades and upgrades and stuff happening all the time. So you have to, whatever you want to specialize in, like, you have to find your natural progression, your natural curiosity in. But then also know that just because you're a specialist now doesn't mean that defines your career. It's not like back in the day when you become a doctor and you're only going to be a doctor. Like, I've seen people who have worked in, power system engineering for 5-6 years, and then gone into being a grid connection, and then gone into network planning, and then gone into being advisory, and then gone into, do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different careers you can have within one. And you can have the option to lead a team and then become a specialist and then be leading a team in that specialism. So I think, don't panic that you have to pick a path and that's going to be it forever, because trust me, there's not. But I definitely agree with the fact that you should find something that you're really excited about, that you really want to hone in on, and identify yourself as a specialist within that. And just become really good at it. Become really good at what you're naturally curious about, and keep learning, keep upskilling, ask questions, be around people who have that knowledge, absorb it from them. I think that will be my advice. And I think especially girls panic a little bit as well. They're like, should I become a manager and give up my specialist title, or should I do this? I'm like, whatever you do, you can always go back. I've seen it many times that people do that sort of dingo of being like, I've led a team before, now I don't, like this. You can always try different things. So definitely become a specialist, but don't panic about specialist being that you're going to do the same thing for the rest of your career. That would be very valuable.
Yeah, I started in engineering as a drafter, and I move around, and now I'm in marketing and communications and construction and engineering. So I really have, move around and tried it all. And I agree, like, sometimes making these decisions of taking the leap of faith are harder because we pigeonhole ourselves. And we always like, oh, I don't want to be pigeonholed at an organization, but then you do it to yourself. So I really value that advice. And ladies, it's been a pleasure today to have you and to get a little bit more, about the energy world, but also about your view on diversity and inclusion and about yourselves. I've learned so much about you and your style of, navigating the industry. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to benefit from that.